Okay, can I call the meeting to order, please? Where are my councillors? Who am I missing? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Councillor Norton? It's the only one missing. Where's Councillor Norton? Hi. Okay, I think we're good to go. All right. Welcome, everyone, to Tuesday, September 6th for the Common Council meeting of the City of St. John. City Clerk, over to you for the first item.
First item, Your Worship, is the land acknowledgement.
Councillor Radwan, over to you to read the land acknowledgement this evening, please.
Thank you. The land on which the city of St. John or Mennequist is situated is a traditional territory of the Wolastoqiyik. The Wolastoqiyik, along with their indigenous neighbors, the Mi'kmaq and Pasquotomacati, signed peace and friendship treaties with the British Crown in the 1700s that protected the rights to lands and resources. Let us take a moment to reflect.
Next item, City Clerk.
Next item is the national anthem.
Please stand. Okay, City Clerk, next item, please.
Your Worship, there are no minutes ready for approval at this meeting, so the next item is the approval of the agenda. And there are a number of additions from Committee of the Whole, as well as a late submission that was handed to Council earlier today for a ticket purchase request for Larch St. John. So the items would be 16.1, ticket purchase request for Larch St. John, 17.1, Committee of the Whole recommendation with respect to Canada Games Aquatic Center revitalization, 17.2, Committee of the Whole recommendation with respect to an amended agreement, Retail Drive and Ashburn Road, and 17.3, Committee of the Whole recommendation with respect to termination of lease with Nan Business. Also, there's a request to move ahead on the agenda items 17.1, Canada Games Aquatic Center Revitalization Plan, to be dealt with under the Section 8 presentations on the agenda.
Okay, I will take a motion to approve the agenda. Deputy and Councilor Hickey on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Next item, City Clerk.
Next item is item 4, disclosures of conflict of interest, if there are any.
I'll have Councilor read one. Or sorry, Councilor Killen's first actually on my screen. Is that all right?
Okay, it's item 17.3. Thank you.
17.3, right, yeah, okay. And Councilor read one?
Yes, Mayor, actually mine is 17.2.
2, all right. Okay, so noted. Next item, City Clerk.
Next is the consent agenda.
Deputy, over to you, please.
Thank you, Worship. I'd move 5.1 through to 5.6, please.
Take a seconder on that. I'll take a seconder on that. Councilor Norton, on the question, I've got a couple of questions. Councilor Harris?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick question, 5.2, our City of St. John Community Energy Action Plan, Pathway to Net Zero. Obviously, there's a lot of references to all the various different plans we already have in place and commitments that this council's already adopted. But my question would be, it says Community Energy Action Plan. Does this then not translate into the corporate plan as well as the community plan? Makes mentions of it, but
Yeah,
probably the
there's
city manager can.
There are two separate ones. There's Samir. Welcome.
Thank you. Through your worship. The plan here will be concentrated on the Community Energy Action Plan Pathway to 2050. So we already have one for the corporate for 2040, but this one is for the community.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Your Worship, if I may, through you to the councilor and all of council, just for your awareness, it is our intention in one of the next couple of council meetings to come in and give you a more fulsome update on all of our climate change initiatives that are currently ongoing. It's been a while since we've given you a full update, so we do have that programmed for the next one or two councils to come in and give you that more fulsome update. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I don't see any further questions, so I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, team. Next item, City Clerk.
Your Worship, next item is members' comments, item 6 on the agenda.
Next item is members' comments. Got the 2-minute speed round, no business. Got my timer on. Councilor Redwan, away you go.
Thank you, Mayor. There's been lots going on in St. John for sure. Moonlight Bazaar was such a great hit. It was unbelievable. I'd love to know how many people were in the street. Many of us were at the Ukrainian flag raising, which was, it was great to connect with the community. It was a very important event, but also, of course, it was very difficult to be there, hearing some of the stories that of people worried about their loved ones. We did end up, I think pretty much all of us went to a provincial meet and greet with Premier Hickey and many of his ministers, and there was lots of other people there as well. It was a great event and a great way to not just connect with them, but I think to connect with a lot of people in our region, which is very, very important. I just wanted to also give my deep condolences to Daryl Ritchie Jr. and Kevin, as well as the rest of the Ritchie family, on the passing of Daryl Ritchie Sr. For anyone who doesn't know, Daryl Ritchie Sr. and his father started Ritchie's Carpet Warehouse 55 years ago, and it's been going strong ever since. My dad actually had a very close working relationship with his business and Ritchie's Carpet Warehouse, where they gave each other a lot of work. So I realized over the years how important it is to build very strong partnerships and relationships as a business owner through watching their working relationship. My dad would have absolutely nothing but rave reviews about everything that they were doing at Ritchie's, and would send every single patron that he looked after to Ritchie's. And I think that he said their business name about as much as he said his own. So, but a couple things that I think that they're most known for is they've given so much money and donations to the Romero House. It was a huge passion. So my deepest condolences, not just to the Ritchie family, but the Ritchie family at Ritchie's Carpet Warehouse.
Thank you. Councilor Killen, over to you.
Worship. I'm sure our teacher friends around the horseshoe are going to talk about this, but it was the first day of school today. So happy back to school to all the little ones. Mine went off to his first year in middle school, so it was a little bit emotional this morning, but all is well. Very exciting for the kids to get back to a little bit more normalcy. It was the first time since COVID, we were actually allowed to go into the school as parents and kind of tour and do our thing. So that was very special. Sculpture St. John, if you haven't taken a little drive-by on the passage, they're in heavy action right now. The sculptures are really starting to come together, which is really, really cool to watch. And also, as someone who has dealt with mental health issues, has dealt with a lot of stigma around that very fact, I just invite anyone to join us on Saturday at the St. John Suicide Prevention Committee as hosting the Stomp Out the Stigma Walk and Run at Rockwood Park. So for those who are, who suffer, for those who are allies, like this is a chance to come in and really dig down into how we can be better as folks in the community to help prevent suicide of those we love. Thanks.
Thanks, Councilor. Councilor Hickey, over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will be brief. I have a timer now, which is big news.
I heard
so
that,
you can
Councilor
keep me-
Hickey, and I
must
was
have been-
overjoyed.
I must have been speaking out of turn fairly often, I suppose. Anyway, I just wanted to highlight a couple things. Moonlight Bazaar, I think, was another huge success for the community with the addition of Mars to their repertoire. I think it was pretty exciting. I heard estimates as high as 20,000, and that filled those two streets over that Saturday, and it was a huge addition to what's happened in the Uptown over the summer. I'd also just like to give a shout out to the organizing team at the Labor Day Parade yesterday. I was happy to attend and joined our member of parliament there as well, and a few others, whether it was our municipal firefighters and pipe fitters and carpenters, and quite a slew of union rep as well as labor reps. So it was exciting to be there and proud to represent the city for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy, over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Labor Day weekend's always a special weekend for us, but this past Sunday marked 40 years for my lovely wife and I to be together. So I just want to shout out to her that, keep up the good work. I don't know how you're doing it, but I certainly love being with you, and I look forward to the next 40 years, dear. Thank you.
That was brief, John, and I have to congratulate you as well. And I also don't know how your wife does it. Just joking, John. Thank you. Councilor Sullivan?
Thanks, Your Worship. Congratulations, Deputy. Thank you to city staff. The Enhanced Wastewise program. Some of us have started talking about that here over a decade ago, but good things come to those who wait. So with supply chain issues and all of the other things that we've had going on, I can't wait. The carts and everything are going to start to be delivered to St. John Homes next week, with the program officially starting in early October. And I can't wait. I just have this picture in my head of our neighborhoods looking so organized, and instead of piles of garbage bags, a bin. I can't wait to not drive my recycling anymore to the big bins and to be able to put it out weekly. I will gain space in my kitchen. I don't know what to do with it. So thank you to staff, and so looking forward to that. Councillor Killen mentioned back to school. Certainly busy, important time though for as we as a city transition to back to school. Please be extra careful on the roads at start time in the morning and end of school time in the afternoons. We need to keep our eye out for some of those kids that may not be as safety conscious as adults need to be. And just as a heads up, our own St. John Police Service is also going to be stepping up their education and enforcement campaign over the next little bit to make sure that we have a very safe and successful transition back to school. And as we transition back to school, and this isn't my idea, actually stolen from my new school principal, Miss Barrington, but in talking to students and as we go to whatever we are now with the pandemic and masks, she had a great idea that I want to pass along. And I choose to wear a mask for my own personal reasons and family. I know many people do. I know many people choose not to wear masks. One of the things I've noticed when I'm wearing a mask is now people will ask me when they see me, would you like me to put a mask on? Or they will ask me before they extend their hand to shake hands. And I think, it's kind of the new reality we're in. And what Ms. Barrington has asked her students to do, which I think is a great idea, if you choose not to wear a mask, please carry one. So that if you do approach somebody, if you do see somebody who's wearing a mask that you want to talk to, you can offer to them, would you like me to put a mask on? Or extend those courtesies? Because we do need to be aware while some of us may have had all of our vaccinations and have a pretty good constitution, there are those who are still vulnerable in our community, whether they're too young or they're elderly or immunocompromised. And I think it's a very good, reasonable solution so that we can make sure those people who are still very, very concerned about the risks involved with COVID-19, that we can make sure we are supporting everybody in our community. So please, if you choose not to wear a mask, make sure you wash your hands, sneeze into your elbow, but carry one around with you anyway, just in case. Thank you.
I'll add to that 1 in 8 who contract COVID end up with the long haul COVID. So that's a good reminder to us. Councillor Norton, over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Congratulations, Deputy. Another milestone. And jumping on where Councillor Sullivan sort of left off, as it relates to back to school road safety, new this year, and I believe it's our first year, all school zones throughout the city are 30 kilometers. So whereas before that would have been hit and miss at select schools, if you're in a school zone throughout the city of St. John, those are all 30 kilometers now. So look, you had the heads up here. So as traffic management officers are around and they're checking those school zones, just be vigilant and take your time, get a head start if you need to. So just a note on that. And as one program, as one sector starts up, another one winds down, and that's our Sunshine Program. And it served 430 children in some priority neighborhoods throughout St. John. And I know at Princess Elizabeth School, where the City of St. John is a PALS partner, that one was busy, and they were, some days the hallways looked, especially in one end of the school, looked as busy as they would on a regular school day, with kiddos in the gym and down the hall, and the frustration of sometimes facility staff getting things waxed and ready. It was at the same time a delight to know that they were engaged with something positive in our community. So hats off to them. And special shout out to my daughter Sophia, who started another milestone in her educational journey. She started high school this year. You've got this one, kiddo. Keep going. All right. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor, and congratulations to Sophia as well. I've been doing a little bit of reading, and this is an old line, but it's back again, and it's people, planet, profit. It's the triple bottom line for sustainability, for businesses, for cities, and just want to say that that's really the track that St. John is on, putting people first. So that's where we want to go, and that's where we are going. Next item, City Clerk.
Your Worship, we've advertised our public hearings for 6:30, so we'll move to the public hearing portion of the agenda, found at item 9.1, and that's for a proposed zoning bylaw amendment for 730 Wilson Street and 15 O'Brien Street.
Okay, I'm sending this over to Commissioner Hamilton to introduce.
Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. Before you for public hearing is an application for rezoning that was submitted by a number of companies for properties located at 730 Wilson Street and 15 O'Brien Street on the city's west side. The application is seeking a rezoning from the two-unit residential zone to general commercial and related Section 59 conditions in order to facilitate a mixed-use development with 100 residential units and 4 live-work units. The application has been evaluated by staff and your Planning Advisory Committee, and included in your package are recommendations of approval with conditions. I will note the Planning Advisory Committee is recommending additional Section 59 conditions to address 2 issues related to tree retention and timelines for development, which staff will address in the presentation. And I did want to speak to the issue of timelines for development. It is staff's recommendation that that issue be addressed holistically through further engagement with council and council committees. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mark Reed, our senior planner with our team for the staff presentation this evening.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Your Worship and council and members of the public, As Jacqueline mentioned, this application is a rezoning and Section 59 amendment for the property at 730 Wilson Street and 15 O'Brien Street. The applicant is proposing to construct 2 buildings on the site, separated by an internal parking area that would be accessed from O'Brien Street. The south building, Building A, shown here on the map, would contain 50 residential units and 4 live-work units. And then the northern building, Building B, would contain an additional 50 residential units with parking provided for both buildings on a lower level. Some existing air photo here of the site. The site is at the corner of Wilson Street and O'Brien Street. It's kind of basically, I'd call it a transitional area between the residential area we find along Manawaganish Road and the Fairville Boulevard Regional Retail Center located further to the south. Some photos of the site here. The existing billiard hall is in the top left corner. The photo on the top right is looking towards the Wilson Street, O'Brien Street intersection. And then the 2 bottom photos are views along O'Brien Street. The municipal plan has the site designated as stable residential. It's located again between 2 arterial roads, and there is topographic separation provided from the adjacent low-density residential areas to the north. The building forms and density agree quite closely with the CG zoning. There is a height variance required that will be processed by the development officer should council approve the rezoning. And the proposed density for the site is 104 units. And staff are of the opinion that the proposal conforms to the municipal plan for the stable residential area. In terms of zoning, the site currently has 2 zonings. The portion of the site where the existing billiard hall is located is zoned general commercial. The existing dwelling unit on the northern portion of the site is zoned R2. The applicant has requested that the entire site be rezoned to general commercial, which would allow for a range of commercial uses in the live-work areas, as well as a building containing multiple dwelling units. In terms of the rezoning, staff have reviewed the rezoning request with respect to neighborhood compatibility in the stable residential area. The development density is 104 units on just under a hectare. It has 108 proposed parking spaces, both underground and surface, which meet the bylaw requirements. And buffering and adjacency is met through the provision of additional trees, tree retention, and the topography of the site that slopes down from the existing dwellings along Manawaganish Road. In addition, the developer is proposing a landscape setback from both O'Brien Street and Wilson Street to provide for some additional buffering and neighborhood compatibility. Staff also note that the development is located between 2 major arterial roadways, Fairville Boulevard and Manawaganish Road, which do have transit service, so that provides for an additional degree of walkability for the proposed residential units. Given this, staff are recommending that the portion of the site be rezoned from R2 to unit residential to general commercial. Recommended Section 59 conditions staff have proposed a suite of Section 59 conditions. One is limiting the development of the site to the applicant's specific proposal, being a maximum of 100 residential units plus 4 live-work units, with the 4 live-work units located in the southern building and the northern building being residential only. This would help achieve additional buffering and compatibility with the surrounding neighborhood. We have the standard condition related to municipal infrastructure improvements being the onus of the owner-developer. One of the things that was flagged that should there be a potential for an on-site fire hydrant for the sprinkler systems in the building, that be installed at the developer's expense. We do have a couple of conditions related to site access and pedestrian accessibility. We're recommending that there be a requirement for a pedestrian access into the site from O'Brien Street, as well as a sidewalk extension along the Wilson Street frontage to better serve the eventual sidewalk extension along Wilson Street and improve pedestrian connectivity in the area. We have a Section 59 condition related to the requirement for a traffic impact statement to be completed by the developer prior to the building permit application. This has been completed, and the developer has provided city staff with a copy of the traffic impact statement late last week, which we have reviewed. The traffic impact statement has identified no concerns with respect to the proposed development. And as well as with a lot of our projects here in the city, it will be required to have a stormwater management plan. And there is an additional condition related to the stormwater and post-development flows from the site. In terms of engagement, as with any application that comes before council, letters were sent out to landowners within 100 meters of the subject site, and it was advertised on the city's website with respect to this evening's public hearing. In addition, the developer has undertaken engagement by sending representatives to visit the abutting properties on Manawaganish Road, and the developer and their realtor is here tonight to answer any questions related to that. At the PAC meeting last month, one member of the public spoke in opposition to the development, and we had 4 letters received. Staff's recommendation is to rezone the portion of the site from R2 to CG, rescind the section 59 conditions on the portion of the site at 730 Wilson Street, and then impose new section 59 conditions that are related to the development. PAC adopted an amended staff recommendation. They did recommend the rezoning consistent with staff's recommendation and the amendment of the section 59 conditions pertaining to the site. They recommended that council impose 2 additional section 59 conditions beyond that recommended by staff. The first was the retention of existing trees between the northern building and the boundary with the adjacent properties to the north along Manawaganish Road. Staff are in agreement with that, and we have provided an amended condition with respect to the landscaping plan that basically achieves that requirement. The other condition that was recommended by PAC was that the building permits for both buildings be applied for within 5 years of the date the rezoning comes into effect. So essentially a 5-year sunset clause. Staff do not recommend imposing a sunset clause. We don't really consider this to be a speculative development. And given some of the pressures that developers are experiencing with respect to supply chain issues, trades, and interest rate increases, staff do not feel that this is a good idea with respect to encouraging the timely completion of the development. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reid. Okay, so I will open the public hearing, and I'll ask if there is anyone here this evening who would like to speak against the application. I'll ask again if there's anyone here who would like to speak against the application for 15 O'Brien Street and 730 Wilson Street. Is there anyone here who would like to speak against the application? We did receive a few letters in our kit, so we're good there, and there doesn't seem to be anyone online. So I'll ask if there is anyone here who would like to speak in support of the application. Good evening. I'll ask that you just give us your name. Are you the developer? Okay, great. Just so.
Good evening, Your Worship. Good evening, Council. My name is Ferris Cathrada, one of 2, my partner Jordan Van Thiel here, as the developers of 15 O'Brien and 730 Wilson Street. May I ask Your Worship if my partner may join us?
Absolutely.
Here.
Good evening.
Good evening. Firstly, we'd like to thank Your Worship and the Council for this hearing and for the support from planning for this project as well. We're excited to bring this project to the west side of St. John. West St. John is in dire need of rentals, and we are in line with the recommendations proposed by planning in addition. Speaking with regards to the sunset clause, we agree that given the economic conditions, given conditions in the environment alluding to the Make in Canada, trades, and supply chain, it does not make sense, in addition to the fact that it is proposed as a non-speculative development. The cost incurred into the project thus far, in addition to the programming we're looking to undertake with CMHC, as well as potentially New Brunswick Housing, respectively allude to the fact that we intend to build and hold this project to support West St. John.
Thank you. I'm going to ask my counselor if anyone has any questions. The kit tonight was very comprehensive. It had a lot of information in it. It covered, accessibility. It covered affordable units. It covered the traffic impact study. So it did cover a lot of things. So I'll go to my counselors, and Councilor Harris is up first. Hang on there, Councilor Harris. We're just going to get your mic on. There you go.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to the two Ferris, I think we've met before. It was interesting to see this come up. I like the idea of the project. There's a few things for it with me, and one of them that stuck out was during the PAC deliberation, it was said by our chair that there was not adequate representation at the meeting, and there was even a discussion around tabling the application because of that. Do you care to comment on that? Because I know that the PAC is a very important instrument that this council uses for their recommendations as community members. So I wasn't in the room. I just would love to hear from you what that was like and what happened there.
Through your worship to Councilor Harris, absolutely. A little bit of commentary just with regards to the PAC meeting. Due to the tight timelines in which we were slotted into that session, it left, obviously given airline changes and the lack of sufficient airline from BC over to New Brunswick, it did make it difficult for us to attend. We did have in attendance our realtor, Kim Hunter, acting as representative, as well as Greg Moran, who was from the engineering team in representation. Unfortunately, the representation that was supposed to be there was not able to make it at the time. And we do understand the importance of that process and that council meeting. However, there were avenues out of our control that created the situation that occurred.
Awesome. And is this your first development in St. John?
It is our first development in St. John, correct.
So you're coming from, one of the things that stuck out for me to this is that you're basically one-to-one on parking. Whereas a lot of the times now smart development looks at, reducing that footprint in order to reduce costs. As well as where you're at, there is access to some other amenities. There is transit nodes within a 400-meter walk. So I'm just curious why the increased amount of parking, because it goes above and beyond what our own Plan SJ recommends.
Respectfully to that, through your worship to Councilor Harris, given the area and the focal point, if you look at the breakdown of the units, there are a number of units in the 3-bedroom capacity, as well as 2 beds and 1 bed. Given that we do have a number of units in the 3 and 2 bed, the focal point will be for families, and within families, we understand and recognize that there are growing families as part of that. So whereby the parking may be an abundance of what's required given the area, we recognize that there may very well be families that require more than one vehicle to domicile. If you have husband and wife or couple in general that are residing in the area, residing at the premises, they may need more than one car. So we would intend to provide those parking requirements to those individuals and families that may need them.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. Councilor Lowe, we're going to you next. We got to get your mic on. Hold on for a second. Is it on? No, hold on.
You had to finish the open session, or anybody else who wishes to speak, unless it's a question.
It is a question. You're asking a question, correct? To this team?
I'm going to ask a question.
Yeah, we're just trying to get your mic on. There you go. Okay, go ahead, Councilor Lowe.
The reason I spoke to the lady that moved the motion 59, and one of the reasons was there was nobody there representing the builders. And there was a person there in opposition, and she had nobody to get answers from. And that was one of the reasons that it was supported by all members of PA except one, I believe. But the reason I supported it was that I can name 300 units here in the city that have gone through PAC, have gone through council, and there's never been a building permit put for them. And that's the reason I supported it. And I think some of the feeling in PAC is getting that way now. People are coming, they're applying, they're getting approved by PAC, they're coming to council, getting approved in council, they disappear. And it's starting to cause a problem here in the city because people, I had a call today, a gentleman bought 3.5 acres of land. He wants to build, and he said, Jerry, who else is building around here? I heard, but, we don't know because the permits aren't being picked up. And that's the reason, or that's one of the reasons the Section 59 was called on. And some of them we have been putting up to 6 years to build. And they've just gone blank, dead. No permits, no nothing. And it's affecting us in PAC, and it should be affecting us in council too. And that's the reason. And that's why I wanted to defend it. And
Okay.
Brett was right by bringing it up. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Killen.
Thank you, Your Worship. So to follow this line of questioning again, can you explain to me why this is not speculative? And can you explain to me, do you have a funding track that is secure? So like to Councillor Lowe's point, we've been given lots of, great ideas and wonderful projects, but what about your project isn't speculative?
Sure.
Sure, go ahead.
Through your worship to Councillor Killam, I would say that the cost that we've incurred on this project so far should speak to that. I think we've provided a significant amount of information already with our architect's drawings and having the traffic survey and the environmental survey. And we've owned the property on 15 O'Brien now for roughly 6 months, and we have a couple other pieces of property in the city, and then we're working on some that are coming under contract soon. So I would say that would be the evidence there. As far
Thank
as
you.
And just to add to that, through your worship to Councillor Killen, with regards to the funding track, we have projects in the West Coast that we are actively pursuing with CMHC at the moment. We've received a letter of interest, an LOI, an expression from CMHC to pursue and build that project. And we've developed a relationship with their Eastern Canada team, which they have expressed a great deal of interest in supporting. So with that in mind and understanding that we have projects we're looking to move forward in this tumultuous economic environment, we also recognize the risks that we're taking to move forward this project in the same environment, utilizing the resources that are available to the best of our ability, to the best of our capital and equity that we can rely on. We will be proceeding with this project.
Thank you. Councillor Redwan, do you have a question? Oh, there you are.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Mr. Kathrada. It was nice to see some of the elements in this project. First of all, it was so nice to see that there would be park and playground incorporated into design. I think that's a great way going forward, and I think it's wonderful because everybody would love to have a playground in their neighborhood, but it's not something that you're able to sustain when you have such a large geographical city. So this is great to look after your tenants. One of the tenants actually had commented about how supportive they were, and about the project, and it got me wondering, because I know there's possible 2 buildings going in, right? I was just curious whether or not one building would go first, would be projected to start, and then after the other building would start. But I'm just thinking, would there be any tenants that would be evicted during the process, and which one's going before the other?
Through your worship to Councillor Redwan, respectfully, we have talked to those tenants and given them discussion and notice of what is occurring with regards to the rezoning. We've reached sort of the best of both worlds with them with regards to them being supportive of the housing for the area, and also giving them effectively options of being the first in line to be able to move into the new proposed development with sort of retaining the rent levels that they're currently undertaking. So we have given them an alternative in the event that, when that development is built. We've also given them the alternatives that if we are to acquire any other parcels of land that have housing on them, they'll have the option to look at those as well as options to move into. So we do intend to give them support.
That's great to hear. I mean, and I know it's not related to zoning, but we're in such a housing crisis, so that's why I asked. The other question that I had, there was some question as to actually doing the development there. Is there any blasting that would need to occur on the side of the slope there?
As far as blasting, we haven't undertaken a geotechnical survey yet, so I don't have an answer for that. But we will be retaining as many trees as possible. And not only is that good for the privacy of the community, but it's also good for us as the developer to ensure the stability of that slope we'll also have a retaining wall there.
Sure.
Thank you.
No, I
That will all be
appreciate
looked after by staff as you go through the permitting process as well. Thank you. Good? Okay. Councillor Norton?
Thank you, Worship. Gentlemen, you're absolutely right. The West Side has a tremendous need for, whether it's transitional housing for those looking to stay within Ward 1 or the West Side, or whether it's downsizing, or whether it's entry-level housing, a range of opportunities. I guess, cut to the chase, more housing is required from coast to coast and the Ward 1 community. But Your Worship, I do sense around the table that although it may not be considered a speculative development, there is some concern amongst some of us here. I would include myself there, that as these projects get approved and we, for lack of a better word, we put restrictions or we handcuff land and development doesn't happen for many, many, many months and then many years, that comes back to the disappointment and the dissatisfaction of not only council but community, especially when the headline is a very nice glossy rendering that an architect can simply do, and your graphic artist put out a fantastic renderings. But then the questions begin, where's the development and where's the shovels and grounds? And you can look at other communities where, granted, I've got a very short amount of time here, where development may be more robust and they can put those restrictions on them and say, look, you got 2 years, you've got to have your project up. And if not, here's the finality of what can happen, or the consequences of what can happen. I mean, I don't know what the range of years are, but I need to see an endpoint, like whether that's 7 years, whether that's 5 years. But folks, from my vantage point, council needs to start taking, I guess, a more clear line. That if housing is real, that, look, we're saying to developers, we'll work with you, we'll get you in there, but you also need to uphold your end of the province or your end of the promise, and the project's got to be ready for folks to move in. So I don't know what that looks like, but happy to tie something in with this, that we support this, but at the end of 7 years, the project reaches conclusion. So happy for council to talk about that, but that would be the will of this small spoke in a very big wheel. So.
Okay, so what we'll do with yours, with your request there, councillors, maybe when we get to to that component where we have questions for staff.
Perfect.
So right now we've got questions for the developers here. So I have the deputy up next. Do you have a question for the developer, deputy?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I mean, I guess the point is pretty straightforward. Yes, we want development, but not 20 years from now. So, I mean, if we're going to be tying staff's time up and we're going to be, tying council's time up, we want to make sure that, and I believe you're sincere, you want to get it done, right? Okay, so I'm saying if you want to get it done and you don't see any reason why, do you have a problem with having a 5 years a long time, sunset clause?
Through your worship, to Deputy Mayor McKenzie, we don't necessarily have a concern with the 5-year sunset clause. We would ask that it would be extended slightly, given the potential increase in interest rates we are likely to see tomorrow. That does factor in significantly into the ability to build. And by that, I mean acquiring the appropriate capital to retain the property where it makes sense, especially if we're looking at programming like the CMHC. A 75% or 75 basis point increase, 25 basis point increase, we're talking in the factor of hundreds of thousands of dollars of decrease in capital available. So based on economic factors, if we see things remain at status quo where they continue to uptick, we will see a longer time horizon of where it becomes economically feasible. However, I think something along the lines of 7 to 10 years would give us ample time to and the wherewithal to ensure that we're able to construct. We do intend to start the project as soon as possible, given conditions retain favorable. If possible, that would look at sometime in early spring or into next summer to begin. If it's not possible, that would be because of supply chain concerns, financial concerns based on economic capacity, and that who knows where that would put us out to for the ability to start.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Harris? Oh, you're off. All right, sounds good. I don't see any more questions for you, gentlemen, but do appreciate you being here tonight and thrilled to have you considering investing in St. John. And we want to make sure that we're working with you as best we can and that you're working with us. I think what you're hearing around the table, it's the old once bitten, twice shy. And I know it's a difficult time, and I recognize that for developers as well myself. I'm not a developer, not suggesting that, but any work that anybody wants to do right now is difficult with labor and materials. So we get that, but we just want to make sure that we can get these projects sort of up and going. So appreciate you being here tonight and appreciate you answering questions. So I'm going to ask if there's any, did you have anything else you wanted to add? Okay. I'm going to ask if there's anyone else that would like to speak in favor of this, and then we'll go to staff for questions. Thank you. So is there anyone else who would like to speak in support of this application? Anyone else here this evening who would like to speak in support of the application? So I am going to close the public hearing, and I'm going to ask Mr. Reid to come forward because I see there are some questions for staff. Councilor Hickey, you are up.
Can I?
Oh, wait a minute.
Can I just make a quick comment before questions?
Oh, yeah, sorry. I'm going to send this over to the city manager here.
Your worship and members of council, two related points. First of all, we have already committed to this council that the entire question of imposing time constraints on developers needs to be discussed at the strategic level. And therefore, we've already committed to this council that at our next strategy planning session, we would have that discussion and provide relevant considerations for that discussion. After that, then it would go to Growth Committee for its due consideration, and then after that to Council. So we are aware of the sensitivities and the desires to address time limits, but we are recommending that it be done in a thoughtful and deliberate process moving forward and looking at all of the strategic considerations, both the pros and the cons. That said, this developer has opened the door and has suggested that they would be amenable to a time limit on this particular development. Therefore, Section 59 conditions are not approved until third reading. And therefore, we can, over the time between first and second reading this evening and third reading, work with the developer and come back to you with what the developer would be prepared and what is reasonable in terms of a time commitment for this particular development, without prejudicing the strategic work that needs to go on for an overall approach through the strategy planning session, then Growth Committee, then Council moving forward. I don't know if that helps in terms of the questions and the focus for this evening, but again, this evening you're not voting on Section 59 conditions, so we do have time to go back and talk to the developer and try to figure out something that does work for them for this particular project. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that does make sense, and I'd prefer the collaborative approach myself. So Councilor Hickey's up first with a question. So Mr. Reid, back to the hot seat.
Thanks, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Reid. I guess that the city manager's comments does offer some insight as to how that could work. I guess as long as it was there by third reading, I'm left, and I'm sure as many of us around the table, I'm left with questions of like, where's Ethos Ridge? Where's the Tin Can Beach development? We've got significant units that were approved by this council that have still not broken ground, and by all accounts have no end in sight on, or even beginning in sight as to when they may. And as the developer presented, there's a very high possibility that interest rates could go up 75 basis points tomorrow, which is significant, and it's significant for development too. So those timelines, I think, absolutely need to be addressed. I guess my question to Mr. Reid would be, is there any understanding from staff? I mean, I would assume that discussion has been had with the developer, given that it was a recommendation from PAC, is there an understanding of what that reasonable time frame would be?
Again, I think as the city manager has suggested, this is a matter that's best discussed further with the developer in terms of what's reasonable. Typically, 5 years gets thrown around, but, given, as you said, and is in the press, the interest rates are potentially more than probably 100% likely going up tomorrow. So I think probably in terms of what is reasonable would be a matter best discussed with the developer, and we could report back prior to third reading in the imposition of the required Section 59 conditions.
Okay, thanks, Mark. I guess on that, Your Worship, I'd move staff's recommendation with the removal of the recommendation to not have a sunset clause on it in effort to have a discussion with the developer, or whatever best phrase that would be.
Do we want to, are we going there now with that, or am I finishing the questions to staff?
Your Worship, I would finish with the questions.
Okay.
And the motions that are before council are for first and second reading of the bylaw. Any Section 59s, as the city manager suggested, would occur at third reading. So there's no voting on Section 59 tonight.
Okay. Perfect. Councilor Harris, do you have a question for staff? I don't have a motion on the floor yet, so if you have a question,
Yeah.
once we're done with questions, then I'll get a motion on the floor, we'll debate.
I need to understand why staff don't think it's speculative. Because it's one thing to say that it's not, but this sounds to me like it's got all the hallmarks of what speculative development would be. And I'm not trying to dishonor or discredit the developer one bit here, but we have to have a framework. And in this chair, I have to be able to understand how you arrived there as to what is speculative and what isn't. So what is it that goes into this? Because I know, in this business, you can leverage approved properties for your portfolio to walk away with more money on other projects and scrap the less appropriate or less margin-based developments in different places. So it does benefit developers, whether it's this one or not, but I just don't understand what the criteria is that we arrived here with.
Mr. Reed, can you get that into a nutshell for us? Because we're doing rezoning tonight for first and second reading, and we'll do the 59s of whether we're going to put this time frame on it or not.
But this isn't about Section 59 because our planner literally said that staff does not believe this is speculative. So that's what I'm asking him about.
Exactly. But if we want to go forward, does it make a difference if it's speculative if you're not considering putting on a Section 59 is what I guess I'm saying, and we're not there yet. So I'll turn it over to you.
Your Worship, through you to the councillor, I realize, and the councillor has a good point, the approval of a rezoning does increase the value of a property, and council has seen that, with other properties, but it's really a necessary step in the development, of many sites in the city to get the appropriate zoning. In terms of the question around staff's review of whether or not this is a speculative development, oftentimes when we do get applications, we get applications that may be showing a typical building that would be proposed on the site, or, something along those lines. In this case, the developer has made, a fairly significant investment in the architectural drawings for the site, the buildings that are being designed. And I guess to back up on that, it's an expensive and time-consuming process to go through this from a developer's perspective. And prior to joining the city, I worked in, as a consultant. And, oftentimes, developers do not want to invest, or they're trying to invest as little as possible in the project because there's uncertainty in the rezoning process before they get the green light of the planning approvals. But that being said, oftentimes, developers want to spend as little as possible, but, these developers have made the investment in the architecture. They've hired the site design professionals. Actually, their engineering consultant that's here tonight is the second consultant on the project. The first one is no longer working on the project since PAC. So I think a lot of the times planners have to basically accept the investment that the development community has made in the project to this date, and that is a good gauge of whether or not folks are speculative.
Okay.
You know, oftentimes we see drawings that, you know, could be prepared on the back of a napkin coming across our desk. And that, you know, that's how we kind of gauge who's serious or not, is a lot of the investment that they've put in the projects. One of the other points here, we had a condition in there, or recommended section 59 condition, that they do the traffic study after the rezoning, but before the building permit. They went out and engaged the traffic consultant, and we have the study in hand now. So.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy? Thank you. Councilor Redwan?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Mr. Reed. I always seem to wonder, I know that you have to send letters out to 100 meters away. How many residents do you know is this hitting, though? 'Cause sometimes we send out letters, and I mean, 100 meters, you might not actually hit many houses.
I don't know off the top of my head how many letters do get sent out, because it's 100 meters from the boundary of the site. So there would be the properties along Manawaganish Road, the right-of-way of O'Brien Street's 20 meters wide. So we'd go likely down Lloyd Street for 80 meters and then into that neighborhood in the other side of Manawaganish Road, you know, for 80 meters. The lots on Wilson Street and along Fairville Boulevard, they're a bit larger. So when you get into those larger commercial lots, the radius doesn't go as far. It depends on the neighborhood too. If we did 100 meters in the uptown, we'd have a lot more letters than we would have, say, if we did 100 meters out on Latimer Lake Road, where we have larger lots. But I don't know. I don't have the number in front of me, so I wouldn't want to hazard
Yeah,
a
I mean,
guess.
I'm always curious to know that. 'Cause some areas, obviously, you know, Manawaganish being a little bit more dense, like you could end up having, and I mean, it just kind of gives you a little bit of insight at how much came back to staff when letters and comments come in. One thing I did want to also mention is that it's good to see some, you know, like 20 possible 3-unit units. I'm sure you guys are having conversations about this all the time. And I do want to agree with you, Mr. Reed, because I think that, you know, the old saying goes, put your money where your mouth is. And that just means, do you want to look to reinvest, you know, to make a real sound investment? And I just want to mention to council, food for thought. If you're coming in from BC and buying a piece of property, I think your intent is to really do something with it. So, you know, I mean, otherwise you'd probably sit on land closer to home. Would be easier to flip other land closer to you, just, you know, to have to travel all this way. Anyway, just food for thought. But anyway, I just want to say welcome to St. John. I'd like to see other developers coming into the city. It's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Reed, it looks like that's it for you for questions.
Thank you.
So I'm over to the city clerk for a motion.
Your worship, for this particular item, there'd be 2 motions required. Reading of the bylaw by title and second reading of the bylaw by title. If council wanted to give any direction to staff with respect to the section 59, that can be addressed as well in a separate motion.
Okay, so I need a motion for first reading by. Okay, yeah, Councilor Sullivan, it's over to you. Okay, hold on, I'll need a seconder. Councilor Lowe.
Thanks, Your Worship. Just a brief comment, because I certainly understand our need as a city for some, whether it's a sunset clause or something else, some sort of venue to make projects happen, so that land doesn't just sit and exist after the amount of work that PAC has done, the council has done, the staff have done, and invested into land for somebody else to speculate. So I certainly understand that. The other piece of this for me, though, is at the end of the day, should this piece of land be rezoned to do this? Not this project, but to do this sort of project, right? Ultimately, that's what we're doing. We're changing the bylaw for rezoning to say a project like this would fit on this land. So for me, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, the proponent has invested a fair amount of time, and what is there certainly speaks to me and says a project like this should be on that land. I don't think in the long run, Section 59, and I know this is the third reading, but Section 59 amendments are really the tool that should be used to make sure this moves forward in that purest sense for rezoning. but it's the hammer that we got right now. So I will send that as comments to staff to just reinforce what I think most of council has been saying, that we need to see something that says that for the time invested by council, by PAC, by staff, that projects are moving forward and it's not all that invested time on our behalf in order for speculators to increase the value of their land. But given what's before us tonight, certainly it's worth first and second reading. Thank you.
Absolutely. Any other questions? I agree with you, Councillor. I would like to see a project like that, like you're proposing on that piece of property. It's density, it is what we want, it's in a walkable neighborhood, et cetera. So I think it's the right move. As far as the parking goes, I get the 3 bedrooms, you know, every family has more than one car today. So I understand that as well. So I have no question. Oh, Councillor Lowe, you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, like, I agree everything Gary said. I second the motion. So what the city manager said, that prior to third reading, they will come back with something. Staff will come back with something, but staff that usually comes to PAC doesn't like anything in the tail end or now nothing on the front end of these motions for units, right? So it's going to be difficult to get it, but, you know, third reading is what we look for something to come back for.
Your worship, through you to the councillor, short answer is yes. We do this all the time. At public hearings, there's an express will of council or concerns from councillors, and we go away and we take a look at that between second reading and third reading and see what sort of amendments that are necessary. If whatever we come up with requires additional consultation with PAC, then we would do that too. So it depends. Again, in this particular circumstance, we have a proponent who has suggested that they are prepared to have some form of timeline imposed on this. That's what we will pursue between now and third reading, and we'll report back to council.
Thank you. Councillor Killen?
My microphone. Thank you so much, Your Worship. Okay, so I'm really excited. I feel badly that you guys have to be our sort of test case for the sunset clause. But that being said, I just want to make a comment to staff to say, you know, as part of this review, can we get a list of developments and how far they are behind going forward? Because I think that would give us some clarity. You know, I look at a pit at 91 King every single day, and it really pains me to think that perhaps if there was a sunset clause and this was still in the same state it is in 3 or 4 years, we could sell it and it could be developed. Taylor Ave is a great example too of a place that if we can let that go to somebody who's going to care about it, that is growth, that is development. So I disagree with the sentiment that we have to just let developers have as much time as they want to do whatever, because ultimately we are stalling growth that way. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Your worship, through you to the councillor, the information you're asking for will absolutely be made available to you as part of the strategic discussion that we need to have on what sort of additional restrictions or tools do we use with developers to ensure that development is done in a timely manner. And that will be the purpose of the strategic level discussion, and then ultimately the discussion at growth and then to council. So yes, we will provide you that information, but that information is not germane to this specific application, and therefore all we'll focus on between now and third reading is this specific application and what we can achieve with the proponent.
Good. Thank you. Councillor Ogden?
Yeah, I'd like to second what Councillor Killen just said. All you have to do is drive through the north end, knowing that there's been properties speculated on now for 45 years, and it's done nothing but damage that community. And one thing that kind of threw me off was when they said, well, maybe 7 to 10 years, and that doesn't fit with me at all in terms of the development of St. John. So that
Well, we'll discuss that when we get to Section 59.
Okay, so yeah, I do agree. We need sunset clauses. And this idea that we're chasing development away, well, we have found that there are developers who are developing right away. So I want to make sure that takes place. Thank you.
I mean, everything is relative. If you have a $50 million project and you have a $1 million project, the time frame is probably different for obvious reasons. So I think, we need to see that whole spectrum, which the city manager will provide for us. So, all right, on the question, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next, go ahead, read that out.
Your worship, just have to read this quickly. A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the city of St. John, and we require one more motion to approve this by title.
Second reading by title, Councilor Sullivan and Councilor Radwan. On the question, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
A
Excellent.
law to amend the zoning bylaw of the city of St. John.
All right, you're on your way. One more reading. And thanks for being here tonight. All right, next item, City Clerk.
Next, your worship, we did skip over the proclamation. So
Okay.
item 7.1 is a proclamation with regard to Respectful Workplace Week.
Whereas all workers deserve to be treated with dignity, and whereas respectful and positive behavior in the workplace contributes to individual, organizational, and societal well-being and prevents unnecessary suffering. And whereas human resources are every organization's single most important asset and the key to productivity, innovation, and sustainability. And whereas all community members have a responsibility to help ensure each other's safety from emotional, psychological, and physical harm, and for each to do their part to break the cycle of victimization and abusive behavior. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Donna Node Reardon of St. John, do hereby declare the week of September the 5th to 9th, 2022, to be Respectful Workplace Week in the city of St. John. Putting people first. Over to you, City Clerk, for the next item.
Thank you, your worship. So next, we've moved ahead on our agenda under presentations, the item from Committee of the Whole with respect to the Aquatic Center.
Okay. Commissioner Hamilton, I'm sending this over to you to introduce it.
Your Worship, members of council, tonight we're pleased to be joined by representatives from the Canada Games Aquatic Center. We have Ms. Amy McLennan, the general manager, as well as Shailene Lozier in the audience tonight, reporting on the progress of the Revitalization Plan for Canada Games Aquatic Center. This was a commitment made by asked for by Council back in February to work collaboratively with the Canada Games Aquatic Center to develop a sustainable business model. And a project team worked over the past number of months made up of city staff as well as representatives from the Aquatic Center to develop a plan to really drive revenue growth for the Aquatic Center moving forward. And we're here, Ms. Amy McLennan is here tonight to present the results of that work and the requirements to move forward with its implementation. With that, over to you, Amy.
Thank you, Commissioner Hamilton. Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. So it is my pleasure tonight to present the Revitalization Plan for the Canada Games Aquatic Center. And our revitalization project team has worked together over the past few months to determine the best options for increasing revenue. This process included market sounding that was carried out by a consultant, a community services evaluation conducted with city staff, public engagement, and a call for expressions of interest. Knowledge gathered from these various inputs was what informed the development of a revitalization plan. And given the Aquatic Center is a community asset, it was critical to gather public feedback on what they deemed to be most important in terms of the services provided. So it came as no surprise that swimming lessons and public swims topped the list. And given we're a community surrounded by waterways and swimming is a life-saving skill, it's, again, not a surprise that the community prioritized that. Our facilities fitness center was also highly prioritized, as well as having a home base for aquatics clubs. And there was a tie rounding off top services in the fact that the Aquatic Center hosts major events, as well as provides lifeguarding for area beaches. So that important community input was kept in mind throughout the development of the revitalization plan, and the plan essentially includes three components, the first being continuous improvement. So what this involves is building up existing offerings for the community to increase revenue, but it's also continuing ongoing work to identify efficiencies and any opportunities for cost savings. The second component of the plan focuses on checks and balances. And an accountability framework developed by the project team will ensure robust reporting from the management of the Aquatic Center will be made to various parties on a scheduled basis. And the final component of the plan focuses on revitalization initiatives. So these will be new revenue streams that will be researched and developed in 2023 to map out the specific details, establish partnerships, and determine the revenue projections for 2024 and beyond. The project team identified a need to recruit a resource for a one-year contract to focus solely on developing and expediting the new recurring revenue streams that are identified in the Revitalization Plan. And an official request has been made to the Greater St. John Regional Facilities Commission to contribute funding for this resource. And this final slide displays the recommendations that are included in your report. And I would just like to conclude by noting the value that the Canada Games Aquatic Center provides for our community. It contributes to overall quality of life, but it also plays a valuable role in growth and prosperity by attracting and retaining new residents. And I am personally incredibly excited for the future of the facility. And that concludes my presentation, pending any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. I'm very excited about it as well because I think I love a revitalization plan. I hate to think of just, getting rid of a piece of infrastructure that you have without taking a real hard look. And we have looked at this, but this is going to be a real deep dive into a lot of possibilities of what it could be. So I want to thank you for being here tonight. I want to thank Shalene Lozier, who's the chairman of the board, for thinking outside of the box and sort of coming to us with some great ideas, I think, as we go forward. And it's going to be exciting. I'm excited for it. So thanks so much for being here. I don't see any questions. Oh, we have Councilor Norton.
No questions at all. I just a bit of congratulations to obviously our center manager and Shailene for your leadership on this one. The Canada Games. Councilor Ogden said it best earlier today. It's awesome that we're starting to take care of those things that we already have. We all like new, we all like shiny, but sometimes we're not always the best landlords. And reinvesting in the Canada Games Aquatic Center is, I know, Councilor Sullivan was a lifeguard there. I think I don't know if he learned to swim there, but he learned to save lives there. So it's I'm happy to see this. If I'd encourage folks, like, if you're looking for a gym membership, if you're looking for swim lessons, you're looking to, I see some of our city staff, you're looking just to get away from your screens for a minute and get down there. We talk a lot about masking. We don't talk nearly enough about healthy lifestyles. We're quick to prescribe that stuff and not prescribe getting in there and getting a good hour of physical or 20 minutes of hard physical activity. And with all the comorbidities that put folks into a lot of health issues, this is the one factor that can help change the tide as it relates to the health and wellness, the longevity, and the general well-being of a community. We do that in partnership with other places, but this is our plug for our very own Canada Games Aquatic Center. So, Amy, thank you. I look forward to seeing where we go. And folks, get in there and go for a swim, pick up some weights, meet somebody new, and leave yourself better than you found yourself at the Canada Games Aquatic Center. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Sullivan?
Without taking this too much further into infomercial territory, thank you, Councilor Norton, for teeing it up. I guess I'm just going to talk about money for a minute. So often with so much of what we do in the city, we are working in the business. It's really difficult to find that time to work on the business. So that's kind of what I see this as, an investment. While you folks are working in the business, you're running your swimming lessons, keeping the fitness center open, getting ready for that next swim meet. Very difficult to take that extra bit of time, or what little extra time you do, to invest to work on the business. So I see this as taking that moment as to have somebody work on the business and work in elevating what is there. So I think that is good money invested, because it is difficult to carve that little piece out when you're a manager. It's hard to do all that extra work. The other piece I'll put to our community, you know, we can talk about it more and more and more. The Canada Games are coming back to New Brunswick in 2029. There is one pool in New Brunswick that is Canada Games caliber, and that's the Canada Games Aquatic Center. So I think investing in it helps St. John's bid to have the games again. And I don't think we talk enough about the sport tourism that facilities like this bring, and put people in our restaurants during a synchro meet, fill our hotels during a swim meet. I'm not sure if it's still happening. At one point in time, we were hosting the Maine State Championships. Do we still do that? So, you know, when we host the Maine State Championships, where the dollar is right now, that's all good for the city of St. John. So I think taking an investment to work on the business, to keep investing in a facility that brings money to the city of St. John, we need to make sure we're doing it as efficiently as possible, but I think it's a good investment. So good to see. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilor. Councilor Ogden?
Yes, I'd like to thank you in taking up what Councilor Norton said. Healthcare is the greatest cost in Canada. If you ask Mr. Premier Higgs today, it's his biggest challenge. And we always spend money after the fact in healthcare. And there's so much we can do for prevention. Our obesity rates are very high in St. John, and for many reasons. But if we can spend money, so I hope that Mr. Higgs is listening, if we can spend money on proactive health care instead of spending it thinking after the fact, I think that we realize we need many, many more recreational facilities, and we have a gem right in the center of our city. And I thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Redwan?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you too, Ms. McClellan. I was very impressed to hear everything that you're doing since you've taken over at the Aquatic Center. I just wanted to ask you, just to kind of tag on to what Councilor Norton was saying, if somebody wants to go into the Aquatic Center, where's the best place to park, and what's the best place for them to look to see what's actually going on at the Aquatic Center?
Through your worship, to Councillor Radwan. Well, in terms of parking, we're looking into advertising just how much parking is available. We actually have over 1,700 parking spots within a 5-minute walking distance of the Aquatic Center. So there's no lack of opportunity for parking, both indoor and outdoor. I personally say indoor parking is a great option when you get little ones in swimming lessons, particularly in the wintertime. Leave the gear in the car and you can walk through the pedway system. So I think that's something that we'll be looking at marketing a little bit more, just what is available out there, because there are a lot of options. As far as what's going on around the Aquatic Center, I would encourage always follow us on social media, Instagram and Facebook, but of course check the website. There's so much going on. I could try to rattle it off now, but I would never keep up.
No, it's great. Your social media has really vamped up. It's great. So yeah, Market Square, Brunswick Square, in front of the Aquatic Center, not too far away, and great in the wintertime, right? So thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so I will take a mover for the recommendations up there. I've got Councilor Hickey and Councilor Harris on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you so much. Thanks, Charlene. Next item, City Clerk.
Next item is item 10.1 on your agenda under considerations of bylaws. And this is for a zoning bylaw amendment with Section 59 conditions at 170 Charlotte Street and 13 to 19 Queen Square North.
Commissioner Hamilton?
Your worship, members of council, before you this evening for third reading is a rezoning application which was submitted by Impact Development for the property located at 170 Charlotte Street and 13 to 19 Queen Square North in the South Central Peninsula. And as a recap for council, this application seeks to rezone the properties from mixed commercial to urban central residential to integrated development and to amend the zoning bylaw to permit the development of a mixed-use commercial residential project fronting on Queen Square. The application did receive first and second reading on August 22nd following the required public hearing. And I can confirm that all legislative requirements of the Community Planning Act have been met, and the item is now before you to move forward with third reading and approval of the required Section 59 conditions. And with that, I'll turn it back over to your worship and the clerk for the required motions.
Thank you. City Clerk, I'll send it over to you for the required motions.
Thank you, Your Worship. So in this case, there are three motions needed: an approval of the third reading in its entirety, an approval of the Section 59 conditions, and third reading by title. So first motion would be third reading in its entirety.
Third reading in its entirety. Councillor Killen and the deputy on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John. The zoning bylaw of the City of St. John enacted on the 15th day of December 2014 is amended by one, amending Schedule A, the zoning map of the City of St. John by rezoning a parcel of land having an area of approximately 1,164 square meters located at 170 Charlotte Street, also identified as PID number 0005140, from mixed commercial to integrated development pursuant to a resolution adopted by Common Council under Section 59 of the Community Planning Act. Number two, amending Schedule A, the zoning map of the City of St. John by rezoning a parcel of land having an area of approximately 2,684 square meters located at 13 to 19 Queen Square North, also identified as PID number 00003921 00006668 and 00361352 from urban center residential to integrated development. Number three, amending Schedule G, Central Peninsula maximum building heights by increasing the maximum building height of PID numbers 00005140, 00003921, 00006668, and 00361352 from 14 meter and 21 meters to 22.5 meters. And number four, amending Schedule H, Trinity Royal maximum street wall heights by increasing the maximum street wall height of PID number 00005140, 00003921, and 00006668, and 00361352 from 14 meters to 15.5. And Your Worship, now a motion for approval of Section 59.
Approval of Section 59. The deputy and Councillor Hickey on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
And finally, a motion to approve third reading by title.
Third reading by title. Councillor Harris and the deputy on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John.
Next item, City Clerk.
Next is item 10.2, another zoning bylaw amendment with Section 59 conditions. This is for 100 Boar's Head Road.
Commissioner Hamilton, over to you.
Your worship, members of council, before you for third reading is a rezoning application which was submitted by Rehabitat for municipal property located at 100 Boar's Head Road in the city's North End Milledgeville neighborhood. The application seeks to rezone the property from utility service to mid-rise residential to permit the development of a 12-unit affordable housing development on surplus municipal lands adjacent to the City Works Depot. The application received first and second reading on August 22nd, following the required public hearing. And I can confirm that all legislative requirements of the Community Planning Act have been met, and council is now in a position to move forward with third reading. And with that, I'd turn it back over to your worship and the clerk for the motions.
Thank you. City Clerk, over to you for motions.
Thank you, Your Worship. So again, same motions, third reading in its entirety, approval of Section 59, and then third reading by title.
Third reading in its entirety. Councillor Lowe and Councillor Radwan on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John. The zoning bylaw of the City of St. John enacted on the 15th day of December 2014 is amended by amending Schedule A, the zoning map of the City of St. John by rezoning a parcel of land having an area of approximately 1.3 hectares located at 100 Boar's Head Road, also identified as PID number 000-42622, from utility service to mid-rise residential pursuant to a resolution adopted by Common Council under Section 59 of the Community Planning Act. Now a motion to approve Section 59.
Approve Section 59's motion. Councillor Sullivan and the deputy on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
And a final motion for third reading by title.
Third reading by title. Councillor Radwan, Councillor Ogden on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John.
Thank you very much. All good? Good to go. Okay, City Clerk, next item.
Next, under submissions by council members, we have item 11.1, a submission by Deputy Mayor McKenzie entitled Homelessness Update.
Councillor McKenzie, over to you to give us the update.
Thank you, Your Worship. Do we have a slide? Or no?
The what?
We're going to do a slide. Okay, we won't. I just want to give a brief update. It's on homelessness is on the rise in all three major cities in New Brunswick, and indeed across Canada. A quick look at the St. John Human Development Council Homeless Dashboard for Moncton, Fredericton, and St. John will show real-time data for July 2022. Although this data is all numbers, we must remember these represent real people with real issues. So in St. John, the total number of homeless right now is estimated to be 141. 88 of those are chronic homeless. 31 for July inflow going into the shelters, and 29 coming out of the shelters with a net 2 people more homeless. Fredericton is 159 homeless with 120 chronic homeless, 23 inflow and 24 outflow, so they have 1 person less homeless. In Moncton, it's 210 homeless, 172 chronic homeless, 16 inflow, 18 outflow, and so they have 2 people less homeless. Chronic homeless refers to people who are homeless 180 days a year or 18 months over 3 years. So as you just heard from that chart that I read, St. John is very fortunate to have an active nonprofit sector working hard to house people who are homeless. But it is not as easy as you may think. Many people who are experiencing homelessness also experience issues like poverty, mental health, substance addiction, abuse, along with a whole lot of other concerns. Housing first is very important, but equally important is the wraparound services that help people to succeed and stay housed and improve their lives all around. In St. John, we have a member of staff who, along with myself, are members of the Community Council on Homelessness for St. John. This committee has members of many agencies who work together to try and address some of these concerns. In addition, the city is completing its Affordable Housing Action Plan, which will support our community's coordination and the city's involvement towards the broader needs of St. John's housing continuum. The city's creation of the Senior Manager of Community Support is also welcome news, which will bring with it greater coordinating capacity between the city and our community's nonprofit organizations focused on these issues. As the City of St. John engages further on issues of poverty reduction, homelessness, among others, we should support the agencies to do their work by providing the supports and resources they need. They have the knowledge and experience to help those in need. However, they will need resources to be effective. It'll be important for the City of St. John to consider what additional resources or level of prioritization are needed to meaningfully contribute to these collective efforts. So having said all this, we have an unusual agenda night because Councilor Hickey is also concerned and has a motion put forward, which I would happily second at this time. So thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Deputy. I just will say briefly before we go to Councillor Hickey that once you feel that change in the air, you start to really think about homelessness because you know that the fall is coming, the winter is coming, and as the Deputy said, 180 plus minimum days a year is a chronically homeless person. They have lots of issues that they're trying to deal with. Poverty is one of them, mental health. Sometimes it's their history, They come from foster care, et cetera. So it's a difficult situation. We want to try to get on top of it as much as we can as a municipality. So thank you, Deputy, for bringing that information to us tonight. And I will get the city clerk to call the next item. Oh, sorry, I need to receive and file. The deputy moves as receive and file. And Councillor Sullivan on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Next item, Your Worship, 11.2 on the agenda, a submission by Councilor Hickey entitled Homelessness in St. John.
Councillor Hickey, over to you. I'll get you to read your motion. We'll get a seconder. We already have the seconder. So if you want to read your motion, we'll go right to it.
Thanks, Your Worship. I think to Councilor McKenzie's point, motion, it's obvious how important this issue is in our community. Is it okay if I read the background now?
Well, I think according to protocol, you're supposed to read the motion and then
sure.
Just to get it on the floor.
The motion being resolved that Common Council direct the city manager as a priority effort to work closely with the other levels of government and not-for-profit organizations within our community to explore options to reduce the homeless population before winter and to provide additional support to those who remain homeless.
I know we have the deputies going to second that, so over to you.
Thanks, Your Worship. And if I can offer the provided background. Our city has long struggled with poverty and housing. In Ward 3, 34.3% of people live in poverty, while 45% of children live in poverty. Shelter costs make up over 30% of income for more than 34% of residents as of 2018, a number that is likely much higher now. As rents rise across the city, the 71% of Ward 3 residents of whom rent are facing higher and higher costs. The Human Development Council currently cites 141 people experiencing homelessness in St. John, up from 112 as of April. Those experiencing chronic homelessness sits at 88, compared to 57 this time last year. As rents rise and vacancy rates remain low, more and more St. Johners are being left with few options other than the street. While we continue to call on the provincial and federal governments to take transformational action on housing, the City of St. John has stepped up with an affordable housing plan that lays out the roadmap for development of affordable housing in St. John. While this plan is a great step, the cold winter months are quickly approaching, and Council must take the steps that it can.
Thank you. Okay, does anyone have any, it's pretty straightforward. Councillor Ogden?
I just want to back up what Councillor Hickey said. When I saw the motion, when it was sent to us the other day, I called Hazel Cochran. Hazel Clark, pardon me. I called Hazel Clark, who I've worked with, who runs the North End Food Bank, and I've been with the food banks for about 35 years, and I asked her, how are the numbers? And she said, we're double what we were last year. And then I think we, as a city, are negotiating tax policies that are 56 years old that have really hurt St. John because we were left out of equal opportunity when the tax rules came in. And our poverty has grown. And we've had one new school in 50 years, and we're negotiating new schools. We have the lowest number of university students of all cities in Atlantic Canada. And I know that trauma is one of the major problems creating the homelessness. I've actually, some of the people who I'm sure we all do donate to are standing on the Somerset Street intersection, are also many of those people sleeping in those tents and even rummaging through garbage in businesses that have shown me their cameras, and you can see the same people and your heart breaks. And of course the trauma brings in drugs, mental health, and booze. And I've probably spent most of my life working with families through coaching and teaching who've experienced this. But beyond that, just a comparison to Moncton and Fredericton, St. John has a much, much higher poverty rate, and that does lead to homelessness. So my call is out to Premier Higgs and the MLAs to please help us We need education, both schools and post-secondary, and we need affordable housing, and we need safe neighborhoods. St. John is in a bit of a crisis in that situation, and the province has it in their hands to solve this. So I appeal to the province. Please, please help us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Redwan?
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the conversation around the table. It's very important. I've had a lot of people reach out, especially most recent, asking about people, communities cropping up in tents in the area. One thing I think is really important for staff to figure out is like the not-for-profit organizations are doing some fabulous work, but is there anybody actually going to these areas to see where the barriers lie? There could be barriers to getting social assistance, because if you don't have an address, a lot of the time you cannot get social assistance. Maybe they cannot find housing. Yes, for sure, there could be opioid addictions. Maybe they don't know where services are. So I'm wondering if there's anybody actually going there. It was interesting to hear, Deputy, you talking about the numbers in Moncton, because as I do watch Moncton Council, I know that they have actually been trying to tackle this for quite some time, and still their numbers are laying around 210. They actually have action plans where they're trying to tackle poverty and homelessness in Moncton. So, definitely really important to look at this, try to get ahead of it if we can. It's, but there's definitely some barriers that are hard to break down, but what are all of them? We don't have enough beds at the places like Outflow and Coverdale and those organizations. So what's the solution? And a lot of the time, our not-for-profit's going to be able to tell us that.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Sullivan. Oh, sorry. The city manager will respond to that, actually.
Your worship, through you to the councillor. First of all, I think it's important for the public to recognize that this is not new, and we're not going to start our efforts now. This has been ongoing for quite some time, including we have actually a meeting scheduled in the next week and a half with HDC, all the other not-for-profits who work on this, to map out the next critical steps. To your question, Councillor, HDC, with the support of others, has gone tent to tent within the various encampments and have spoken to as many people as are willing to speak to them to understand why they're there, what the challenges are they experience, et cetera, et cetera. This is an incredibly complex issue. If it was simple to solve, we would have already solved it. So there are complexities. There are, I know we often use this as an excuse. It's not. There are serious financial issues here. We need to throw money at this problem. And when I say we, I'm referring particularly to the provincial government in order to address it. For example, last winter, in the height of the cold, we could have had more people in shelters if we would have had the staff. We didn't have the staff. We didn't have the staff because there was no budget for that staff. So there are a number of areas that we can look at. We are already providing some support to those who are in tents by offering them garbage bags, et cetera, and we'll continue to look at those and many other things. So as your city manager, I welcome the motion. It expresses the will of council for, assuming it goes through, it expresses the will of council that we are to treat this as a priority over the coming months to do what we can before the winter season. But I think everybody would recognize around this table, we are not going to solve the homeless situation in the city of St. John in the next few months. So we will work as hard as we can on it based on the will of council. Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager. Councillor Sullivan?
Thank you, Your Worship. The conversation seems to be building really well. I appreciate what Councillor Radwin had to say about this being very complex and being a whole lot of different things that have piled on. And what do we see? We see folks who are homeless living in tents. And it really reminded me of what we often hear from our police chief when he talks about there are so many issues in the community that they admit they shouldn't be dealing with, but why do they deal with it? Because they get the calls because other people are not dealing with it. We get the calls on this because we tend to be the level of government closest to the people. But my gosh, the issues involved here, whether it be poverty, mental health, the range of issues that lead to people being homeless, are not a municipality's ultimate responsibility. We don't have the deep pockets to hire the social workers, to provide the money that municipalities would then use to build housing and follow through on their action plans. I think it's incredibly important for us to do what we can do. And I am buoyed to hear that our staff are already engaged with other folks who have much more expertise than we do on this topic. I'm glad we're engaged. I'm glad we're doing what we can do. But I will pile on Councillor Ogden's request that the folks who have the deep pockets and ultimately the responsibility for a lot of the problems that these folks are involved with get fully engaged and bring their checkbooks. Thank you.
Excellent. Councillor Killen?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to highlight something, and this is all public information. So we have already established through the Chief of Police, the Chief's Community Action Group, right? So as a result of that, we started this back in, I think it was the spring. And so we have folks from across the board. We have, we got outflow here, we have the police, we have corrections, we have Coverdale, we have there's a huge group of folks that he's brought together under this guise. And the highlight that I wanted to highlight here is the subcommittees. So we have one for discharge plans, we have one for homelessness. So discharge plans are people who get out of jail, and then what happens, right? We have drug dependency, we have youth issues, we have quick reaction teams. So talking about a no wrong door policy and having continuity of care within the community, because these are the folks that are actually dealing with these folks, you know. Mental health is another one in here where we have Horizon, we have the addictions folks. So I think we need to look at what the chief is doing here and really try to see how we can put it on steroids. How can we supercharge the efforts? Because these are the folks that are, like I said, front line of these issues. I definitely don't want to recreate the wheel here. So I just wanted to highlight the actions that have gone on in here. It's been very powerful. We're all welcome to join the conversation. In fact, Judy Dingwall was on CBC when this all came out. As many of you know her from Avenue B, and she said, we're just looking for big hearts. We're looking for people who care. We're looking for people to volunteer their time and energy. So the next meeting's in September. I just wanted to call everyone's attention to that because I think we can really come together and try and solve these problems as a group.
Thank you, Councillor. Maybe you'll send a reminder to Council about that for us. Thanks. Councillor Lowe?
In regards to, for instance, city-owned property, Chowan Field, I was involved on Wednesday. The principal called me and asked me if I could remove the tents. Well, the only way, she had called the police. The police would not come unless the city informed them that they wanted them off their land at Chowan Field. Mark Dion did that. They went down, they moved the tents, and they came back, and the principal called me and said there was one left. Well, then on Saturday, Arlene Dunn calls me because the worry about the needles of the kids and playgrounds going back to work Tuesday. So I went and joined Arlene on Saturday. I went and spoke to 2 or 3 of them who were from Moncton, and the one in the tent said, I'll be gone tomorrow. Beautiful tent. Sunday afternoon, the principal called me, the tent was gone, and they were cleaning up needles. So city-owned property, the only way the police will act is if the city tells them they want them off their property. I don't know, and school-wise, it definitely should be done. I don't know whether feels that there's tents on, that the city owns the land, but the city owns Chowan Field, and that's the playgrounds for Prince Charles School.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Radwan, you're up again. And then Councillor Hickey, I'm going to go back to you to wrap it up. Yeah, so I will do that. So I'll go ahead, Councillor Radwan.
Yeah, I just want to mention briefly, I think that, and I've gotten a lot of messages like this, can we move the tents? And, you know, we can move tents all around the city, but we're not looking after the problem when we do that. I want to see people with roofs over their heads and fridge full of food. So, you know, I'm happy to use some of my time to help out, as Councillor Killen had said, with the with the group there the chief has put together. But I think that we need to find real solutions, not Band-Aid solutions, but I want to be able to look after our citizens.
I agree. We like to find the real solutions. We need real dollars to go with it, but that would be helpful. Councillor Hickey, wrapping it up here.
Thanks, Your Worship. Very quickly, just appreciative of this conversation. I think it's an important step, and I think that the real actions that come out of this motion, I think, will help support the immediate need in this community, and that need is very immediate. I think we owe it to both to the 144 odd people who don't have a comfortable and safe place to sleep tonight, and the people that's impacting in our communities, whether it be the folks that normally use the parks that they're camped out in, et cetera. But I think it's all important, and I think it's all encompassing. And it is disappointing that it falls on the lap of this council to have to resort to take action on this issue. I think, I'd be so bold as to say that I think the province has failed us when it comes to housing. I think they've failed us in terms of affordable housing, and I think they've failed us in terms of shelter housing. And now you saw it in Councillor McKenzie's numbers. While we're experiencing big numbers, our two other major centers in the province are experiencing worse numbers. I think that speaks volumes as the inaction that we've seen provincially, and that's extremely frustrating for me. Further to that, I guess I'd just say that I hope what it comes out of these conversations that the city manager and his team will have are clear, concise efforts. So at the end of the day, we can just help, if it's 144 people or if it's whatever that number may be, get tents out of our parks so that people have better places to sleep at night and have somewhere to go, because I think that's unacceptable in our communities. And I think while it shouldn't be our job, it's become our job. Thanks very much.
Thank you. All right. So on the, I'll call the question. The motion's on the floor. It's been seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. All right, we're on our way with that. Next item, City Clerk.
Next item is 11.3 on your agenda, a submission by Councillor Harris on UMNB conference.
Over to you, Councillor, to read your motion.
Your Worship, just have one slight adjustment to it. One word, really. That council approve the registration and travel expenses for any councillors to attend the 2022 annual UMNB conference. Sure, sorry, not one word. For any councillors. So it's just not exclusive to me.
Okay, I'll need a seconder on that. Councillor Killen.
So I add that because it doesn't, the way my schedule's worked out recently with the job coming up in October, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to make the whole thing. But it is an opportunity that council was invited to by the United Municipalities of New Brunswick, and they were a group that we used to be part of that are currently kind of a ground zero for these municipal reform conversations that include almost every other municipality except us. Of course, our group would be 8 cities, but I know Fredericton and Moncton also participate at UMNB as well, and I think it's important now for any of us who are going to be at this table for the next 4 years to get around some other councillors in this province who are trying to figure out what the future of municipal and local government looks like. We were extended a specific invitation to come as special guests, essentially, since we're not members at this point by the executive of UMNB, and I think it was an offering to get us back to the table. I think the voice of St. John is missed there. And I know why we left in the first place. I know that there was frustration and that was considered largely a rural reality that UMNB dealt with, and that cities' issues needed to have its special forum. But anyway, I would love to get there myself. I am going to try to work that out, but I would love to see any other councillors who wish to go to that be able to go. It's just an hour up the road. The cost of the conference is $520 plus travel expenses. It's 2 nights, so it's not a big cost, but it is, I think, an important meeting at this time.
Anyone? Okay, I was going to say, have any questions for the councillor? Councillor Sullivan.
No questions, Your Worship. Just the CFO and I talk a lot about just getting better at us having processes. And this is something where we're absent a strong process around who goes to what and how does this budget get apportioned. And I think, well, I'm going to take away and have more conversations with CFO Fudge, and perhaps in month's time, something will come out of the Finance Committee, because we do have this budget for what is being described here for us to go to conferences and to represent. But at one point in time, I know somewhere in the history of a council that wasn't on between 2012 and 2016, once a little bit of corporate history, once upon a time, everybody could go to every conference. And so folks would pile on, and you might have 11 councilors jump on a plane to go to FCM. A little bit of urban myth, some of whom would go to the conference, some of whom would not, but take the trip. And I know that it got a little more focused, and we designated folks to be ambassadors, for lack of a better word. We have 2 FCM delegates, 8 cities delegates, so they would be people who would go on our behalf to lobby and to bring back information and all those things. But we don't, under our current council, kind of have a process around. And with my money hat on, if 11 of us decide to go to all of these without kind of a focus and a strategy, we need better processes around it. And then this isn't a critique, because Councilor Harris has used the one process that we do have, which is bring it to council to approve money. So for me, just because we aren't members of the Union of Municipalities in New Brunswick, I guess I'm not willing to open it up to the potential of 11 people going to a conference that we're not part of. And then I don't know when 8 cities is coming, but eight cities will come up where we are members. So for me, I don't think this is one I see the value for council in, where we're not members and where we need a better process. But I will commit to talk to CFO Fudge and see about coming up with better processes. I'd be much more happy if this was 8 cities, not so much UMND. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Norton?
Thank you, Worship. As Councilor Sullivan has said, it's, I guess similar to the developers that came just earlier on, we hadn't, Councilor Killen actually said it. She said, I kind of feel bad that you're one that we're talking about setting limits on. Well, that conversation had arisen because of a number of other pain points or frustrations that had led up to that individual one. Well, similar to Councilor Harris's, it's his motion that's bringing this conversation forward. It's how these things get fleshed out, and we come to better processes and procedures in doing things when a motion comes forward and you have a chance to sober second thought, because you think, okay, well, what could happen, or how do we do this better? And it's the process around that. And do I have concerns with it? I mean, not massive substantive ones, but I think it's process improvement. But I also believe that every single dollar that we spend, we're accountable to somebody for. It's not my money. And whether we believe it's $1 or it's $2.50, whatever the monetary value on it, we're accountable to that. And do we have a vote on this with this body? No, we don't. We've been invited as guests. Yes, invited as guests to a number of different functions and events and forums, and we can't go to them all because we do have finite resources, and we do need a process around that, which to me would be selecting an ambassador or a representative like FCM that Councilor Harris has attended before. But I mean, for this one, I think reading the minutes on this one, I can't support that one. We do need a process around it. And are we missing a whole lot? I don't believe so. I believe that Cities of New Brunswick, that body that we're fully engaged with, that's the meat and potatoes of where we're at. And as it relates to this one, I was on council when this one kind of went the way of the dinosaur. And I'm at this time, I'm not looking to dig that one up and continue the path that we're on with Saves New Brunswick. It's not to say that a new process can't have us fully engaged with this one, but for this particular motion, I can't support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I will say for the public, just so you have an idea of what we're talking about, we have the Union of Municipalities of New Brunswick, and that would be some of the smaller municipalities that would be like Rossay, Quispamsis, that sort of a size. You have the 8 cities of New Brunswick, which go by the Cities of New Brunswick Association, and that would be the 8 cities that are considered to be cities in New Brunswick: Fredericton, Moncton, St. John, Campbellton, et cetera. And then you have the Association of Francophone Municipalities in New Brunswick. So those are the three. Those are the 3 entities. We are members of 8 cities of New Brunswick. So we wouldn't be voting members of Union of Municipalities for NB. But they all put on conferences. 8 cities is coming up the 22nd of September. And they're grouped together because of continuity and because of similarities. And so we are in with the cities because we're a city. So that's where these things sort of break down into what they are and where they are. So Councillor Radwan, over to you next.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, so this, I'm going to piggyback a little bit on Councillor Sullivan, what you had to say. So I did connect with CFO Fudge, actually, asking him if he knew. I wanted to know if he knew what the balance was in our budget for a line item like this, but unfortunately I caught him in his car, and that's how dedicated staff are. So anyway, so I'm not sure that we would even have all of that in the budget if everyone decided to go. So I guess that my feeling is to maybe send it over to staff to even figure that out first. But secondly, and I did for the FCM, paid for myself. I was planning on going to this and paying for it myself. Should I be? Well, that's up for debate. I do really feel like from being at the FCM, you can get out of it exactly what you want, and it can be absolutely invaluable. And I know I was, I just like to watch the room. And Councillor Harris and Killen and the deputy, they were working the room as much as I was, trying to tap into as much information as they could in Regina. So I think it can be really invaluable, these sorts of conferences. The other thing that I would like to mention is that when you want to get a progressive council, I think these sort of things can be really enticing to people maybe in the future, because that's people are always looking to develop themselves in the new way of working. But is it something that we should be spending? What has happened? I can tell you that the town of Quispamsis allots $3,000 per councillor to attend any events or do training. Once they hit that max, they're at the max. The city of Moncton actually has a budget of $4,500. Should we? That's up for debate, but I think it's something that I would like to see in the budgetary discussions. Is there enough money to cover whatever? And I'd like things to be, for sure, made fair and equitable. So, for example, a few of us went up to Fredericton, and then later on Councilor Norton decided that he wanted to do something. Well, if there's no money left there for him, that's not fair. So anyway, I'd like to have those discussions, but I do wonder how much money is even sitting in that pot, because one thing that I wouldn't support is going over budget.
Okay, well, hold on for a second there. Hold that thought. City manager, I want to switch over to you and let us maybe know what's left, but we need to know what's in the whole envelope as well, because, the last council had to do some terrible things like closing fire stations and cutting $10 million out of the budget. So it's hard to put like $3,000 per councillor and city mayor, into a budget for travel and I agree, professional development is extremely important. So I'm just looking for that balance of how do we go forward with some of this.
So, Your Worship, through you to the councillor. First of all, this is tied to the overall sustainability plan that was developed back in 2019 in terms of a path forward. And during that sustainability plan, it was reinforced that The effort for council engagement would be through FCM in the first instance at the federal level, and then through the Cities of New Brunswick Association, and that's where our effort would be. And of course, that can be revisited at any time by this council or any successive council. To answer the specific question on budget, the annual budget right now for councillor engagement in any sort of travel-related or professional development opportunities is $11,200. That's the budget for this year. And there is $3,400 remaining in that budget, with most of the money that has been committed up to this date really being focused on our attendance at FCM with a couple of other small points. So it's $3,400 that's left to answer the question. Thank you.
Deputy, over to you.
Well, I got the answer to one of my questions. So I guess, I mean, there's obviously value in professional development. I think that what we have to do is we have to prioritize. I don't want to go over budget for sure. We have $3,400 in the budget. We have you said the Cities of New Brunswick is September 22nd, Your Worship?
Yes.
Yes. And that obviously is a priority. You know, if I guess depending on how many people want to go to that and if there's any money left over, I would consider this, but I wouldn't consider this ahead of our Cities of New Brunswick. That would be my priority. So with that little bit left, I think we should be investing in what we actually pay a membership fee to attend and vote on under, and maybe next year we can, you know, find some money to do more. But I guess under those circumstances, I wouldn't be supportive of it at this time.
Okay, thank you. City Manager, what did you say was left in the budget? 35?
$3,400.
3,400. So if we were not to use that, say, between now and the end of the year, would that be gone or would that go into next year's budget? Because that would almost probably, on, what's the average? Just, well, it depends. I mean, this year we sent 2 people to Regina. I mean, that would be an expensive trip if it was like in Toronto next year. It's 1 flight away.
Your Worship, if I may, every year is going to be different because it very much depends on the location of the conferences, very much depends on whether airfare is required, et cetera, in order to attend these conferences. To do not only the professional development opportunity, but the networking and everything else that is so valuable and why we pay registration dues in the first place for councillors to attend these things. But there is $30,400 left this year. To answer your question, there's nothing in the operating budget that rolls over to the next year. At the end of the year is declared surplus or deficit, and then there are standard practices in place that we use to deal with either one of those. So there can be a decision made through the budgeting process, which is ongoing now, through Finance Committee to increase the allotment for next year, if that is a desire of council. But the budget for this year is $11,200, and there's approximately $3,400 left.
Okay, Councillor Radwan, your second go round.
Yeah, just thank you, Mayor. Just quickly, I just wanted to see if maybe City Manager, if we can maybe dedicate some time at Finance to discuss this line item, because I felt very sad that this was on our agenda again. I don't, you know, I think if there's a real need for this, and it's council's will in the end, I'd rather have it as a budget line item at whatever it needs to be, and that's what it is. And you know, councilors shouldn't have to come here to ask for these things, in my opinion. Thank you.
Well, councillors would always have to have permission. You'll always have to come here, you know, to get permission. Councillor Sullivan.
Thanks, Your Worship. Actually, just to add on to what Councillor Radwan, I've already sent the email to put it on Finance Committee's agenda. We're looking at the budget for next year. Because if we have a solid policy around it, it wouldn't need to come here. It would hit budget, it would have policy, and then would be a managerial thing. So as Councillor Norton said, unfortunately, this has gotten into the whirlwind of a lack of process that we have. But I am committing, and I know the finance folks around the table will have a robust discussion on it, so we won't be in this position next year.
Thank you. I'm going to go, Councillor Killen, have you had a chance yet? No, I'll go to you first then.
I just wanted to ask about the 8 cities, because last year, so I'm alongside yourself, the nominee, we both were nominated by the nominating committee to represent as the ambassadors for 8 cities. And last year they said only you and the mayors could participate. So I don't know if and I haven't seen any details myself, even though I'm the nominee. So I'm wondering, like, is that going to be a space that we can even go and participate this year?
There's some things on their agenda that only the mayors are going to. I think that's at the beginning of it on the 21st. But then after that, it's open to the councilors.
If I may, the 8 cities standard agenda format, which has not been embraced for the last 2 years because of COVID, but the standard 8 cities agenda format is it begins with an executive team meeting, and the executive team, I believe it's the accurate term is executive council, that is the mayors. So there is a meeting just with the mayors, but that is the beginning and only a fraction of a standard Cities of New Brunswick agenda. There are a number of other invited guests that come and give presentations, et cetera, and I will certainly chase down where we stand in terms of that agenda for this particular year, but I know they are trying to line up gifted speakers at this point in time.
So even with this short lead time, we don't have any details on attending the conference? 'Cause you said it's
I'm
the
sure
22nd.
they do. I don't.
Because I feel like I would rather go to something where we're collectively seeing Fredericton, Moncton, all of those councillors, et cetera. I know that we're not a member, but they are, so we could still go and take that opportunity, especially if we're not going to get to really attend this 8 cities one. The short notice seems like we have seen nothing. I've seen no anything from them on how we go.
Yeah, and I haven't gotten anything from UMNB, so.
That's, I have as well, yeah.
Yeah, that's why we just got that.
So I don't want to lose an opportunity to collectively work with our colleagues around the province if we don't have to.
Councilor Norton, going to you.
How do I say this? It's almost a tradition of council to debate for the longest amount of time, the least amount of dollars.
That's true.
Let me say that. Like that's an ongoing tradition. And I would always default to the fact that sometimes happens because the greatest amount of dollars we have the least amount of control over. So it's already cooked. Like a collective agreement comes forward, you can bite around the margins. It's a great deal of money, but at the end of the day, you have very little leverage and latitude over it. This one we can debate it all night, and it's a minuscule amount of money. But I go back to the fact that it's a lack of process, and it's the principle in the matter. Like the banquet is $145. A non-member to register is like $520. I might have all my costs wrong here. But I'm telling you, is the juice worth the squeeze on this one? Listen, if I was the executive of the UMNB, I would be asking everybody to attend this as well, because I have no money in my coffers. I have none. Like, I need you to come. And when I look at this, when I look at the agenda, really there's something happening Sunday with some resolutions. We can't vote on them anyways. And it's an awards banquet with the mayor of Riverview speaking. Like, that's it in a nutshell. Like, at the end of the day, the return on investment on this one isn't worth $1 to me. It's not. It's not. If I want to call councillors in Fredericton, I can call them. I can talk with them. In fact, I have one that's coming down next week. We're going to meet for a coffee. This isn't worth taxpayer dollars to me. Like, I can't support this one. I'm adamant in the fact that I'm encouraging other councillors not to support this motion. There's been motions in the past before you, Councillor Radwan, where I have drafted, in fact, the common clerk could find it in an instant, where I've said exactly the same thing, that we have an envelope of money for every councillor, even for ward priorities, even for PD or PL. It's PL now, not PD. There we go, for PL, for professional learning. This isn't where we're going. What we're going to learn there is some grievances of Heartland, New Brunswick. I've got bigger fish to fry, and I'm not frying what could be $500 worth of fish. I can't do it. We've got to be careful with this one. When I'm talking about mowing mediums and I'm talking about sending a counselor or counselors to this, I'm going to choose mediums. That's all.
Okay, Councillor, that's it. I think Councillor Harris, I'm going to pass it to you.
Yeah,
to
I'll wrap it up, Your Worship. Unfortunately, if it were up to me, I would absolutely mow the mediums as well, but this is money that we can't spend on that, as the councillor across from me knows very well. And with these things, at a time when local governance is literally being upended in this province, and we are going to be joining in with other municipalities around the regional service commissions to do things that have never been done before, I find it completely distasteful for the councillor across there to say that it's a useless amount of time, that it's too much money.
Councillor, I don't want to be criticizing one councillor or the other. I mean, at the end of the day.
I just said it was distasteful, and the councillor was able to finish his statement, so I just don't understand why.
Okay, we'll finish up then.
So anyway, if anybody's paying attention to this, it's a great example of the differences of opinion that can exist here, because we went to FCM and you could have said the same thing about FCM, and we came back with contacts, with networks. We've got things that are happening right now around a conference to try to pull things together with experienced personnel from BC that we wouldn't have met any other way except to be there. And I'm just saying, we haven't been at this table for 6 years. We've been invited. Sure, it's only 3 days. Sure, the agenda doesn't look like it's that much. But again, at the end of the day, it's what you make out of it, as Councillor Radwan said. So I'm still going to put it forward. I'm still going to try to clear my calendar to go. And I would encourage anybody else. It doesn't sound like there's many people who want to go up there. But, you know, when St. John has the reputation it has in the rest of this province of just being a bunch of complainers, I think it's our job to get out there and try to do something to change that. And we do have that reputation. And it has been said multiple times.
Councillor.
And I think it's high time that we had people who are willing to go to these places and talk to people we haven't talked to for 6 years.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ogden?
The complainer thing. I'm a doer, I'm not a complainer. And I take offense to that a lot. I am not a BMW,
Okay, well, I'm going to call the question.
okay?
I'm going to call the question. All in favor of the motion that's on the floor? Aye. So what have we got? Who's a yes on this one? Councillor Killen and Councillor Harris, we got 2 yeses. Those opposed? Everybody else. Okay, motion fails. Next item, City Clerk.
Pardon me. Your Worship, 12.1 on the agenda is an update from the city manager with respect to select catalytic projects and advocacy.
City Manager, over to you.
Your Worship, members of council, this is a standing committee, this is a standard council agenda item where at the first council meeting of every month, I'm expected to provide updates on some of the catalytic projects without touching all 8 at every occasion. Today, I'm going to provide you very brief updates on 3 projects: the school, the Fundy Key site, and the industrial parks. First, in terms of the school or the learning commons on the South Central Peninsula, this council is aware that the proverbial ball is in the provincial court in terms of determining site location. Once site location has been established, then after that, the remainder of the steps can continue, including dedicated funding, conceptual and detailed design work, and ultimately construction. The province has been taking quite a bit of time to do their due diligence in terms of determining which of 2 possible sites on the South Central Peninsula they can support and offer and recommend to the appropriate ministers. In a discussion with the Premier last week, who was in St. John visiting for the day, he offered that they are very close, because we, of course, did bring up this question to the Premier. He offered that they were very close, and although it was not a firm commitment, he believes that a decision on site location will be made sometime in the month of September. And then after that, the other steps can follow. So we are still in standby mode while the province completes that analysis and makes it the appropriate decision on the site. They have all the information they need from us. They have our known preferences, and now we have to wait for their announcement. The second update is on Fundy Key. It passed very quickly at the last council meeting because it was on consent agenda, but the tender for the development of the public space at Fundy Key has been approved. With that, we are now on track to begin that work as described within those within that staff report, and therefore that is a very positive step forward. In addition, in our discussions with the developer, the Elias Management Group, they continue to insist or assert or affirm, perhaps is the best word, that they are still on track with their proposed development and the establishment of, or the beginning of the construction on the first building. So in short, the Fundy Key project remains on track at this time, which is tremendous news considering the very real challenges that we are experiencing within the development community. The third update is on industrial parks. Council is well aware because they have approved, but for the benefit of the general public, three key initiatives have already taken place. First, there was an allotment of money for what we would call some baseline beautification and immediate enhancements to our industrial parks to make them slightly more attractive to anyone who would wish to immediately invest. That work is ongoing and on track. But we're not really focused on the individual or the small company that may wish to immediately invest. We want a strategic, intentional plan for the development of our industrial parks longer term. To that end, this evening, Common Council approved two separate staff reports. The first was recognizing an allotment of funds out of the strategic reserve in order to fund the necessary analysis work that is required. And the second was the tender document for that analysis work. The analysis work I'm referring to is basically to do a value chain analysis. What are the most likely types of businesses that we should be pursuing within our industrial parks in this modern era, post-pandemic, with the international influence that the city of St. John has with its ever-growing port, rail systems, etc. That value chain analysis, once complete, will be a key element in the development of the strategic plan, and we are still committed in the work plan for next year to complete a strategic plan for the revitalization of industrial parks, of our industrial parks. Subject to questions, that concludes the briefing for this evening, or the update for this evening.
Any questions for the city manager and his update? Councilor Harris, over to you. We're going to get your light on here. There you go.
Yeah, what role, if any, city manager, do you see council playing in that discussion? And I only ask because I was on a call recently with Richard Zarowski, who was a former meteorologist down in Nova Scotia and Halifax city councilor that ended up playing a role with city on going out to try to find and meet with, connect with, and basically try to draw green businesses to Halifax. And they did quite an extensive amount of work back in 2008, 2010 to attract new business that way. And his comment was that his belief was that it was a powerful place for him to be as a local decision maker at those tables where it normally would have just been businessy type of development people. So I'm just curious if you see any of that in this catalytic project in the future. I know that what you're doing right now is that landscape analysis. I just don't know if it's come up or if it's been discussed or if you guys have come across anything like that.
Your worship, through you to the councillor. The short answer is I absolutely do see a role for members of council in this moving forward. We need to develop a strategic plan. What do we want in our parks? How do we want it? Who are we going after? Et cetera, et cetera. Once we determine that, council and individual members of council would be outstanding ambassadors to help go after that business and help enable the strategic plan. We do some of that now. A number of you have brought potential business opportunities to the attention of staff and to Envision St. John and to others for us to try to get them to establish here. I foresee that happening in a much more significant and deliberate way once we have a plan for the industrial parks.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll need a motion to receive for information. Councillor Harris and the deputy on the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. City Clerk, next item.
Next item, Your Worship, is 13.1 on the agenda. It's a submission by the Finance Committee with respect to capital budget policy.
Councillor Sullivan, over to you.
Thanks, Your Worship. The motion is we recommend that Common Council approve the amended policy FAS-005 capital budget policy as presented. And with the seconder, I'll add a few notes.
Councillor Hickey, seconding.
Thanks, Councillor Hickey. Look, I know this council is proud of the long-term financial plan that we have created, and certainly good time for a shout out for former Councillor Merrithew and his leadership in the Finance Committee. Mayor Darling always talked about passing the baton, and I think this is one baton that we have done a good job of one council passing to another. We're very proud of it. But one of the strong characteristics of a good plan is that you revisit that plan. And that is within our documents. Our finance team keeps us on our toes because things change. And as things change, your plan needs to change. And that is certainly the case in what we have before us tonight. As a result of more data, we had information on our updated state of the infrastructure report. And when we looked at where we are with our infrastructure that the City of St. John is responsible with, we looked at the two pieces of our capital policy. On our operating policy, our roads, our recreation facilities, buildings, all those things we own, because our state of the infrastructure report is showing that we are trending upwards and things are getting better, it will allow us, in the policy before us tonight, to change our balance to 80% of renewal, fixing the things that we own, and 20% investment into new infrastructure. However, that state of the infrastructure report also said on the utility water side, we have more infrastructure to be concerned about there. So the policy is recommended to stay where it was at 90% renewal and 10% in new investment. So because of better data, we are able to make those adjustments, and that's what's before us tonight. Thank you.
Councillor Ogden has a question for you.
Yeah, Councilor Sullivan, first I'd like to commend over the last number of years the sewer, the water, the debt. Those are all huge things. And one thing I really would like more of a comment is that you make sure that we take care of things that we already own, like our sidewalks, et cetera, like our ballparks. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Redwan.
Just quickly, Mayor, I think something that's really important, I would encourage all the councillors to open up the plan that it kind of got us talking about this, but also we were talking about our assets before that. And it really was eye-opening for me to know that we actually we own, and like it includes the streets, $3.64 billion worth of assets, which is actually more than what Ottawa is looking after. And so it's extremely important for us to be sticking to these policies in order to try to maintain those. So I definitely commend CFO Fudge and his team. They've done a great job, but it's really, really important to stick to these financial policies. Because I don't know, I think the city has been doing a great job of trying to maintain all of that with this small population and growth that we've had. It's a little bit less than Calgary and more than Ottawa. So just think about that. City has been doing a fabulous job, but it's very important to stick to these policies and to get them in place.
Councillor Sullivan, you're going to...
Thanks, Your Worship. I'll just wrap it up for any other questions. I neglected to throw out a few thank yous because certainly to our finance team who keep us on our toes and keep this document alive, but the support throughout the organization that brings the data that lets us change these policies. And and I know councillors are all super engaged, but I do have to give a shout out to our finance team, Councilor Norton, Councilor Hickey, Councilor Radwin, and yourself. Because sometimes, Mr. Levine, it can be a little dry to look at numbers. But the team engages, and thanks to the leadership we have, and that allows us to do things, right? Like that 80-20 split Councilor Ogden referred to, incredibly important. You know, that once upon a time, before plans and structure, everything that came before council was a good idea. The problem that never came before council was the tennis court that needed repair, the pipe in the ground that's really old but not leaking yet. So now that we have a policy that makes sure that 80% in the general fund, 90% in the utility has to go to renewal. We are looking after our roof, and then we can buy 20% of a new couch. Thanks.
Doesn't sound that enticing the way you put it like that, but. Okay, so the Councilor Sullivan has read the motion. The motion is in your kit. Do I have a mover and a seconder on it yet? I do. Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Next item, City Clerk.
Next item is 15.1 on your agenda. It's a letter from the public with respect to flyers in a plastic bag with a recommendation to receive this letter for information.
Recommendation to receive for information, Councilor Hickey?
I do have a question on this one.
Go ahead.
I'm just wondering, this was a motion that was...
Yes, that was brought by you in the past.
This was a motion that was passed by this, not this council, previous council. Is there any update from staff as to where it may be?
Your worship, through you to the councilor, the reason this is received for information is, it's not new and we're already committed to this. What we've briefed this council on is that our first priority right now is to get the new Waste-Wise management program in place. That will occur towards the end of October, and then of course we'll have to manage it there afterwards. So it's still our intent to address this issue as part of Work Plan 2022, and we will be before council in the November timeframe with our recommendations. So we have not lost sight of this. That's why we don't believe there's a requirement for referral motion to the city manager or anything else. It's on the work plan. It will be before you before the end of the year.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, City Manager. Appreciate it.
Okay, so I have a mover and a seconder on that. And I have a mover on. Do I have a seconder on it? The deputy on the question? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item, City Clerk.
Next is item 15.2, a letter from the public with respect to economic expansion of local region tourism with a recommendation to receive for information.
Councilor Norton, Councilor Sullivan on the question. I'm going to question on, Councilor Sullivan, over to you.
Thanks, Your Worship. Well, this one kind of hit me in the feels because I spend so much time in docks and near water, so I thought I should comment. As much as it's received for information, I think we should. I also think we should keep this one pretty handy. You know, as we continue to go down the road of talking about branding and focus as a city, I'm a real proponent with leveraging our aquatic infrastructure, whether it be the bay on one side or the river on the other. And I think it just makes us stronger. So when we're in conversations, as we see the port doing work all around, I don't think it hurts us to have this sort of information of what's happening in our Bay of Fundy neighborhood, and leveraging it entirely. There's a lot of good information here. I don't know if it's for us to take leadership on, but I think it's good stuff that we can use. Thanks.
Sounds good. Councilor Radwan.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to quickly comment. There was a portion of this that was part of the Discover St. John piece. And of course now is being controlled by Envision. But what a lot of the time people don't understand locally is that they've never marketed to us because they're trying to bring tourists in. So I know that that there's been about $2 million spent on tourism. The restaurants have been hopping. Well, you saw the Moonlight Bazaar. I heard that there was some people saying that they they didn't recognize a lot of people in Uptown, which is a good sign that there's tourists coming in for these events. So there's been a lot of focus in on that. One thing to make note, I don't know if everybody around the table has seen it, but right now Envision has their dashboard online. People can take a peek at their KPIs on there. And anyway, I don't know if a lot of people know about that, but that's one way to know what's happening with Envision.
Thank you. Councillor Hickey.
Just very quickly, Your Worship, lots of interesting pieces in here. And I guess to Mr. Johnson's second point, building on Councillor Sullivan's point, the tourism opportunity from the boating community, I think, is significant. I mean, you see the amount of pleasure crafts that leave the St. John River system locals in an effort to tour of the Bay of Fundy is significant. And I think the barrier to St. John, obvious in the reversing falls for a lot of folks, but also not having reliable docking space and not having reliable docks in our harbor for pleasure craft is significant and does pose a big barrier. It's nice to see us taking a step with the port with the development on Long Wharf. We've seen the addition already of that breakwater and the extended docking space there. Hopefully we'll be able to, once the refurbishment of Market Slip is finished, be able to continue that there and maybe eventually on to Pugsley. But I think there's a lot of opportunity there and well worth exploring. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor. I shall call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next item, City Clerk.
Your Worship, next item is 16.1 on your agenda. It was the late addition of a submission by L'Arche St. John. It's a request for ticket purchase for an upcoming event, and it's a price of $125 per ticket. And I believe the Deputy Mayor is going to move a motion on this.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I would move that interested councillors contact the common clerk to arrange to have tickets to go to this dinner.
So, right, yeah, if you'd like a ticket, contact the clerk's office. So that's the recommendation. Do I have a seconder on that? Councillor Ogden on the question? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Next item, City Clerk.
Next item is 17.2. This is a recommendation from Committee of the Whole with respect to alignment of Retail Drive and Ashburn Lake Road intersections, and there was a resolution passed by Committee of the Whole.
I'll get you to read that. I'll let everyone know that Councillor Redwan has a conflict on that. That's why she's left.
So the motion for this item would be that the City of St. John enter into an amended and restated land acquisition agreement with Clearview Homes Limited in the form as presented to Committee of the Whole at its September 6, 2022 meeting for the purpose of exchanging land, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the said amended and restated agreement and any document ancillary thereto or necessary to give effect to the transaction.
Councillor Lowe, you're moving that. Councillor Sullivan on the question. Councillor Ogden.
I'd like to make a comment what Tim O'Reilly said earlier, that the number of accidents at that area have been profound, and this should lower them, and I want people to know that Ross Avenue will become much safer.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Harris.
Yeah, just putting out my words on that, Your Worship. I'll be voting against this. We didn't have, compared to what Councillor Ogden just mentioned, I didn't see any data that said this was the biggest problem intersection in the city. It's certainly a subpar design, and we knew we had to fix it, and it's a pain in the butt there to stack up on two lights, but at the end of the day, it's a big commitment for the city for a lot of confusing gains, and I think it highlights a lot of bilateral funding agreement problems that the province continues to be paternalistic with us about how we have to allocate our resources to fix these problems, which just should be fixed. And I think the partners that we're involved with haven't negotiated in good faith, but that's beyond the purview of this council to talk about publicly because it's a closed agreement. So I will, I guess that's it for me. I'll be voting against it.
Thank you. Councillor Hickey.
Thanks, Your Worship. Just quickly, I know there's been some significant issues, at least as the ward councillor for there, and I know Councillor Lowe has obviously done a lot more heavy lifting on this one than I have, but the pedestrian issues will be resolved on Ross Avenue in that area, which I think is a huge win for that neighborhood, especially when you have the Moreland Mobile Home Park right there. The lot of pedestrians in and out of there accessing transit and school buses, things like that. So I think it's great that that's going to get fixed as part of this larger project.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? 2 opposed. Councillor Killing and Councillor Harris. Motion carried. Okay, next item.
And the final item, Your Worship, is a recommendation from Committee of the Whole with respect to termination of lease at City Market for Nanya Business.
Okay, so Councillor Killen has a conflict on this one, and that's why she's leaving. So I guess I'll get you to read the...
Sure. Resolved that the city terminate the lease with Nanya Business Restaurant Limited effective September 7th, 2022, that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute all such documents ancillary to such purpose.
I'll need a mover on the deputy. And Councillor Sullivan on the question. Councillor Redwan.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to quickly say that the reason why I'm voting in favor of this is because I do believe in being fair and equitable. So I wish Nanya Business all the best over in the north end there with their new location.
Thank you. I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. So before I take a motion to adjourn, just want to say thanks again to staff. It's been not too long of a night. It wasn't that long of a council kit. And it was Don's darling line who always said, we like to talk the longest about the least amount of money. But as Councillor Norton said, that's the amounts of money that we do have some discretion over. Anyways, it's a good night. And so thanks to everyone. And I'll take a motion to adjourn from Councillor Lowe, who seems to be anxious to get out of here. And the deputy, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thanks, team.
Just a reminder to the